Good morning, everybody. Happy New Year. Welcome back. So happy to see you all here. We're going to start by singing some songs. We'd love it if you would stand up and worship with us. Oh, you are God, and we lift you up. We'll keep singing, we'll keep praising, and we won't stop giving all we got, 'cause you're worthy of all glory. And no, there is no other. You are forever, Lord over all. There's nobody like you, no one beside you. To you let endless praise resound, every night and day, and with no delay, let endless praise resound. Woo! Boundless love, light before the sun, your glory eternal, never stops. Giving all you got, creation keeps singing, and oh, there is no other. You are forever, Lord over all. There's nobody like you, no one beside you. To you let endless praise resound, every night and day, and with no delay, let endless praise resound. To you let endless praise resound, every night and day, and with no delay, let endless praise resound. Lift you up, up, up. We're giving you our love, 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 for everything you've done, done, done. Oh, we give you all the praise. We lift you up, up, up. We're giving you our love, 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 for everything you've done, done, done. Oh, we give you all the praise. Resound, every night and day, and with no delay, let endless praise resound. To you let endless praise resound, every night and day, and with no delay, let endless praise resound. To you. All throughout my history, your faithfulness has walked beside me. The winter storms made way for spring. In every season, from where I'm standing, I see the evidence of your goodness all over my life. my life. I see your promises in fulfillment all over my life, all over my life. Help me remember when I'm weak. The fear may come, but fear won't leave. You lead my heart to victory. You are my strength, and you always will be. I see the evidence of your goodness all over my life, all over my life. I see your promises in fulfillment all over my life, all over my life. You see the cross, the empty grave, the evidence is endless. All my sin rolled away because of you, oh Jesus. See the cross, the empty grave, the evidence is endless. All my sin rolled away because of you, oh Jesus. Whoa, I see the evidence of your goodness all over my life, all over my life. I see the promises in fulfillment all over my life, all over my life. Sing it out, church. I see the evidence of your goodness all over my life, all over my life. I see your promises in fulfillment all over my life, all over my life. So why should I fear? The evidence is here. Why should I fear? The evidence is here. I've heard 1,000 stories of what they think you're like, but I've heard the tender whisper of love in the dead of night, and you tell me that you're pleased and that I'm never alone. You're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. I've seen many searching for answers far and wide. I know we're all searching for answers. Only you provide, and you know just what we need before we say a word. You're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am. who I am. It's who I am. 'Cause you are perfect in all of your ways. Yes, you're perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways to us. You are perfect in all of your ways. Oh, you're perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways to us. Love so undeniable, I can hardly speak. Peace so unexplainable, I can hardly think as you call me. Deeper still as you call me. Deeper still as you call me. Deeper still into love. Love, you're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. You're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. You're a good, good Father. Sing. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. You are perfect in all of your ways. Oh, you're perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways to us. You may be seated.
Happy New Year. My name is Chris Causey. I'm the lead pastor here, and I'm so glad that you've chosen to join us on this January 8th. This is crazy. It's like 2023. Is anybody else like still surprised by that? I mean, I'm still trying to wrap my head. I have moments quite sincerely where I'm like, oh, last year was 2019. Like my brain is still feel like it's stuck in some weird time vortex that I haven't been able to figure out how to get rid of. But I'm super excited about this month, this series, really the next kind of 5 months and just what's mapped out series-wise, where we're going to be, I think is just sets us up for 2023 to be an incredible year, hopefully for you singular and for us kind of plurally as well. I don't know what your favorite job was in college growing up, but like for me, my favorite job in college centered around this guy right here. This little creature looks really big and maybe somewhat quite terrifying on the screen, but it's actually about the size of half of a Rice Krispie. It's called a boll weevil. You see, in college, one of the jobs I somehow secured was an inspector for cotton plants. And my job literally was to travel around in rural parts of South Carolina and count the bugs I found on cotton plants. They paid me 50 cents an acre, and I had thousands of acres to cover every single week. So as a college student, like, I was driving around, I was making tons of money, and it was really fun because the villain of the story was this guy. And if you're not familiar with the boll weevil, if it's not something, personally, I think the word boll weevil are two of my favorite words combined. Boll weevil is just a fun thing to say in any conversation randomly, just to see what the other person does on the other side. But boll weevils originally were in Mexico, and at the end of the 1800s, early 1900s, they started migrating north. They can only fly and travel small distances, but over the courses of a few decades, they managed to get from Texas into the deep south. Now, if you know anything about like southern agricultural economies, which most of us don't, you know that the cash crop for the South, where a lot of the financial generation economically was around cotton. And boll weevils are incredibly terrifying little creatures because this is what a cotton boll looks like, and this is where cotton fiber comes from. So if you're wearing cotton, this is where it originated from. These little creatures crawl around and they puncture a hole in the cotton boll before it flowers, and they deposit roughly 100 to 300 eggs. And then those little eggs hatch and they begin to consume the flour and the fibers, and boll weevils could completely eradicate cotton plants. Specifically because they had a tendency, two boll weevils in a course of 4 months could become millions of boll weevils. So many towns, when boll weevils arrived, experienced devastation economically. Parts of Alabama, which were kind of the cotton capital of the world at the time, boll weevils arrived there in the early 1900s, and where an average farmer would see a yield of about 15,000 kind of barrels of cotton, they saw in 1 year a reduction down to 5,000 barrels of cotton. So at this point, economically, in just one harvest season, financially, they were almost ruined. And by the second season, a boll weevil was present in the community because they would move into the forest, they would partially hibernate, then they would come back the second season and do further devastation. And most farmers would end up losing all but maybe 5 to 10% of their cotton plants by the time it was done. At one point during the boll weevil spread, 1/3 of all the pesticides in the entire United States of America were being spent on a small portion of the United States trying to eradicate this one creature. It was extraordinary. Completely destroyed homes and livelihoods. It's estimated that 6 million people moved out of the South into the Northeast and Midwest because of the economic hardship that this little bug created. Which is why I was paid 50 cents an acre to travel around thousands of acres and to look in this small canister, because ultimately what changed the whole trajectory of the boll weevil fight, because they were incredibly resistant to pesticides, the one thing that they could not give up was looking for love. And they figured out that if you put a boll weevil's pheromones into a trap, no boll weevil could ever walk by. It was like Ed Sheeran was playing a song and the boll weevils just were drawn straight to it. And so part of my job was literally to look inside of this and make sure, are there boll weevils? Let's inspect it, make sure. And if there was, it was like nuclear Armageddon would then descend upon with airplanes and chemicals to eradicate anything that might be a boll weevil. And it was my favorite job because I felt like, I am a superhero stopping the battle against these love-induced creatures that can destroy an entire economy for a region. And I tell you the backdrop of a boll weevil story and the economic devastation it caused in U.S. kind of history, especially southeastern history, not because I want to prepare you for that like dream job of getting on Jeopardy this year, but because in some ways it mirrors a lot of the context and the backdrop of emotionally of a passage I want us to look at today. You see, this time of year, there's a lot of discussion around Happy New Year. And it's one of those phrases that as I was thinking about, as we got closer, I was like, Happy New Year is something we say, but it's not something we experience. We say it every year, but most of us, if we're being honest, we have the same year that we had last year, that we had the year before that we had the year before that. Resolutions don't really work. I mean, it's a failure rate that would pretty much, you would never ever step into any car or vehicle or any type of transportation that had the success rate of our resolutions, right? Like none of us would ever travel that way. And so I was like, man, how about this year, instead of saying it, let's experience Happy New Year. And that's what this series is about. And the story I want to start with doesn't feel happy and it doesn't feel new. But I think that embedded in this story is something that's critical for you and I this year. It's a passage found in a 2-volume set called the Book of Kings. It was the 2nd Kings specifically that I want to look at, chapters 6 and 7. I want to tell you the story in its entirety. Not so much run through the story with the passage. There's so much content there. But I just kind of want to give you the broader story and then focus on a certain key passages that help you understand it really well. 2 Kings was really a historical book written for Israel. It was the kind of the chronicling of the kings of the nation, and subsequently after the Civil War, kind of the break apart of the nations of Judah and Israel. And specifically, this story happens in the time frame where the nation is not doing very well. They're a small nation. There's a lot of powerful nations around them. And in that day and age, kings conquered. That's what nations did. We live in a relatively pretty extensive age of peace. The only way we've been reminded recently in the last year is Russia deciding to invade Ukraine. But that act of we want their territory was the common kind of operating system in the ancient world with kings. And so this is exactly the backdrop of 2 Kings. In chapter 6, 24 through 25, it says, sometime later, Ben-Hadad, who is the king of Aram, mobilized his entire army and marched up and laid siege to Samaria. So it's not just a region, it's a city. And they laid siege to it, which means the army encircles the entire city. And by encircling the city, the walls and the gates are closed up, and nothing gets in, nothing gets out. So that means every bit of food and water and resources that you have is what you had the day before the army showed up. So they're laying siege, which is a very effective military strategy that was really common in the ancient world. And what typically happened after great siege campaigns was great famines. That's why you see there was a great famine in the city. The siege lasted so long that a donkey's head sold for 80 shekels of silver and a quarter of a cab of seed pods for 5 shekels. And you don't even have to be an expert on ancient currency to understand this is probably not good. If you sat down today for a meal and someone rolls out the donkey parts and you get the donkey head, you probably intuitively recognize I think I got the bad part of the donkey, right? You don't have to understand donkey head cuisine to recognize, donkey heads are probably at the bottom, can I get a leg or a toe or something? The head is not the most, nutritious portion of a donkey, which is kind of what they're trying to do for us here. The writer of 2 Kings wants us to understand how bad it's gotten. It's the donkey head is going for 80 shekels of silver, which is months and months of salary for a donkey's head. Just gnawing on a donkey's head, not even something I ever want to do. But let me focus on the second part. A quarter of a cab of seed pods for 5 shekels. Actually, the Hebrew is kind of funny in this, which is what the language originally was. There's versions of the Hebrew that colloquially called this dove's dung. That's because this is animal food. And it looks like this. And this is a carob pod. It's traditionally animal feed in the Middle East, the Mediterranean region. It's actually for those who ever do want to get on Jeopardy. Carob pod is linked with the word carat. The idea of what a diamond's weight, the 0.2 grams, that comes from the 20 grams, that comes from the carob seed. So there's kind of a little interesting factoid for you there. But the shekel weight, all of that, what it's actually communicating is that this many carob pods is what it's referring to. So it's about 10 to 12 carob pods, and it's sold for a month's salary. To put that in your hand, that means that a handful of seeds, which is what you would have eaten, because each one of those pods had about 20 seeds in it. So you've got a little over 100 seeds total, and that would have cost you a month of your salary. That's how economically kind of devastating this siege happened. So not the best place to be, not the best place to be living at the time. And in case you think that's a little absurd, I just would kind of economically remind you of what this actually is called is hyperinflation. And there's been about 58 recorded cases of hyperinflation in modern history. And the most famous happened in Hungary in 1946 around the currency. I think it's the pingo is how you say it. The pingo experienced a period of hyperinflation, and estimated towards the end of that, all of the currency in print at the time would have been worth a tenth of a penny. Every 15 hours, prices were doubling. So if you ate something that morning and then went that evening and ordered the same thing, the price of it had doubled. So this hyperinflation, while rare, is something that's happened in the modern world too. And it really is economically, emotionally, just a devastating period of history. This is why you see, as the king of Israel was passing by on the wall, a woman cried to him, "Help me, my lord the king." The king replied, "If the Lord does not help you, where can I get help for you?" From the threshing floor, from the winepress. Like, this is the guy who's in charge of the nation, whose one job is to solve problems and to fix the economy. And a woman cries out to him while he's kind of surveying the damage and inspecting the army and kind of the state of things. And he's just like, "Look, I can't help you. I'm powerless. I have nothing to help you with." And then he asked her, "What's the matter?" And then, because I recognize there are kids present in the room, I'm going to give you a picture in a very kind of calculated way of what a siege looks like. When he asks the question, "What's the matter?" she basically tells him that there's been a silence of the lambs dispute, because that is what has started to happen in the city. That's becoming common as a source of food now. And the king is completely just, his mind is blown. He is hopeless and despairing, because that's what happens in a siege. Not just economically are you ruined, but emotionally you're ruined too. You just lose hope. And yet, in the midst of it, there's one character that introduces something in the story that I think is really important. His name is Elisha, and Elisha is a prophet. He's the messenger. He's the kind of the person who was the religious influencer of the day. He's the one who kind of speaks on behalf of God. And he tells the king, who is in a fit of rage and despair, "Hear the word of the Lord. This is what the Lord says. About this time tomorrow, a seah of the finest flour will sell for a shekel, and 2 seahs of barley for a shekel at the gate of Samaria." He tells the king this, and the king is like, whatever. And to kind of help you understand barley, because it was so bad that when we were first given the economic picture, we're not even given a picture of barley, which is actually like real food of the day, which like the real poor food of the day. We're giving a picture that's wrapped around animal feet. So now the comparison is Elisha saying, look, by tomorrow, real food that you eat every single day before the pandemic, that's currently going for $7.69 a pound. Okay, so I'm doing some translation of what a shekel would translate into our currency. That's roughly barley, $7.69 a pound. An average family of 4 would eat about 37 pounds of barley a week. So you can do that math. It's crushing them financially. They can't afford this. This is why they're eating pet food. And he says, by tomorrow, barley will be 15 cents a pound. What? 24 hours, barley's going to swing that much? And you see the officer who's with the king, he says, look, even if the Lord should open up the floodgates of heavens, how could this happen? He's like, that's impossible. Even God can't do that. Because barley requires months and months and months to grow. There's no way we're going to have such a surplus of barley in 24 hours. Everyone knows that you need 6 months before barley is going to be planted and grown. That's where they are. That's the despair that they have. They're in a siege. And just in case you think maybe a siege is such a distant, foreign idea, I think there's actually another way of thinking about a siege that actually is quite relevant to your life and my life. And it was something that began to be viral in the last 4, 5, 6 months, but it's not really new. It's this notion of quiet quitting. This idea where you give up. You just silently surrender and you wave a white flag. And quiet quitting is not new to the workforce, and it's not new to the human condition. And so I think that the challenge of a happy new year is that we can say that every single year of our life, and eventually, without ever communicating it to anyone, we just start to quiet quit on certain areas of our life. We don't even think or dream in those areas anymore. We just say, Happy New Year, Happy New Year. Maybe we kind of give some verbal resolutions. Maybe we this is the area of my life I'm going to see change. But what we don't say are all the areas that we don't believe change can even happen. We quiet quit in our relationships. We quiet quit in our finances. We quiet quit in our health. We just quiet quit. Wave the white flag, and we give up hope. Just write it off. And that's not too far removed from the siege mindset. Because the goal of a siege was to get you to quiet quit in life and to give up. Because once you defeated and created a people of despair, you just walked in and you completely demolished and destroyed them. And I think that the power of this passage is that there's this quiet quitting that's happening all throughout the story. And then there's Elisha, who gives us the one antidote to quiet quitting. I don't know where you've quiet quitted in your life. I'm pretty confident there's some areas, though. Maybe it is in your marriage that you've decided, I'm going to settle for the status quo and the low pain that comes with that, than risking the high pain of trying again and it failing, or showing up and caring and they don't, or trying to financially make some progress or to apply for some jobs and just be told no. Because no hurts, doesn't it? Showing up with your whole heart and they don't, it hurts. Believing that one day you'll get there and you never arrive, it hurts. Especially when you scroll through your social media feed and everyone has gotten there. Everyone's arrived. Everyone's living in that place that for the last 10 years you said you'd get to, that you never arrived. And so we quiet quit. We give up hope. We surrender and we wave the white flag. And my challenge to you, out of what comes out of this passage, and processing and praying, is that instead of showing up on the first day of this series and say, hey, Happy New Year, let's talk about habits and let's talk about resolutions, was to show up and say, hey, let's talk about the places that you're not even going to make a resolution in. Let's talk about the areas of your life that you don't even want to have dialogue about. And the reason I believe we can do that is because if we're really going to experience a happy new year, I think it happens in those places the most. Because those places are the drag. They're the headwinds of our life. And it's really hard to gain steam in every area of our life if we're constantly facing that. And I love how in 2 Kings 7:16, what happens in the aftermath, in the gap between Elisha's first statement and this moment, is that nightfall comes and God shows up. Something miraculous happens. The Aramean army hears the sound of what they think is the sound of many armies coming to Israel's defense, and they flee. I mean, not just flee, they drop everything and run. And you kind of see that. It says, then the people went out and plundered the camp of Arameans. Like the city realizes all the Arameans are 40 miles away at this point. In the preceding passage, we find that they're at the Jordan, which is 40 miles from the city of Samaria. And so they come out and they raid the camp. They plunder the camp of the Arameans that was filled with resources to support the thousands of troops. And so, a sea of the finest flour sold for a shekel, and 2 seahs of barley sold for a shekel, as the Lord had said. These people went from being in a siege to now seizing the victory. It's amazing. It completely transformed their circumstances. And I would argue that what is critical for your year and my year is that we start to practice hope again. You see, a lot of people like to say hope is not a plan, but without hope, you will never plan. So hope by itself is not enough, but hope is essential. And if you're going to dream about your marriage being transformed, or about your family growing, or about stepping into a new career, or getting healthy, or finally overcoming an addiction in your life, if you're going to start to dream about the areas that you have quiet quit, that you've waved the white flag, then it begins with hope, not a plan. Because without hope, you will never even risk planning to see transformation. And that hope is critical. It's the soil that all the seeds of plants have to grow out of. Because you have to believe that there can be change. You have to believe that something can be different. I mean, I walked through this in the middle of the pandemic like so many other churches and kind of pastors and small business owners. Of just being in a place where I remember the summer of 2021 and being like, oh my goodness, I don't know. Are we going to make it? Are we going to survive? Like, how do we do this? So many people had moved out of state, and I'd watched our giving drop $250,000. I don't know about you, but I can't write a check for $250,000. And I just watched it evaporate. And I remember sitting on a boat fishing with a friend of mine, and it just becoming this like holy place where I had this realization of like, God, I'm not dead. I don't think you're done. I don't know how this is going to turn out, but I do know if I stop moving forward, it will not. So I just need you to help me. Whether it's 6 days, 6 months, or 6 years, Jesus, give me the strength to take a step. Just keep me walking. And when I can't walk, help me crawl. And when I can't crawl, help me drag my body forward, believing that it's not over. Because I believed in what God was doing in this church and the lives that he were impacting, even if all it was an empty room and a camera. Because hope was essential in that season for me to even risk planning. And it's really easy, I think, to blink, and now it's 2023, and it's like, man, God showed up and there were miracles, and we're not out of the woods yet, but man, we are like, I'm not in the scary part of the woods anymore. And to kind of underplay or kind of skip over the hard time and how essential hope was. For some of us, 2023, I think, can become an incredible year if we're willing to reclaim hope and start to walk, even if it's just one step at a time. That we can experience happy, new, and a year. And part of it is to go back to my old friend, the boll weevil. And about 1910, 1911, the boll weevil arrives in Alabama. And Alabama is the cotton capital of the world. The soil in Alabama isn't the best soil, which ironically is what cotton actually thrives in. Cotton is a good plant for bad soil. And so the boll weevil is on the edge of Alabama and begins to spread into the communities. And no joke, farmers in one season are economically devastated. This is when the huge flight of 5-6 million people starts to kick off, because at the time, Alabama, a huge portion of their economy was wrapped around cotton. And it gets dark and it gets despairing. They're in a place of siege. But there is a man named H.M. Sessions. And H.M. Sessions is a seed seller. And he's watching the devastation the boll weevils are causing in Alabama, and he takes a road trip to Virginia. And as he's driving through Virginia and North Carolina, he notices the soil there is very similar to Alabama's. But they have a crop that Alabama doesn't. It's something called a peanut. So Sessions acquires peanut seeds, and he goes back to Enterprise, Alabama, and he tries to convince the farmers to switch, because he thinks peanuts can grow there. No one has proven it, but he thinks it can happen. He's got hope. And only one farmer buys seeds from him. Well, the next year, the next growth season, farmers only have about a yield of 1/10 of what they'd gotten prior to these things sweeping through. But there was one farmer in the town who had a record profit year, and it was the one who grew the peanuts. So the next season, all the farmers switched over to peanuts. In Enterprise, Alabama, and Coffee County, Alabama, became the peanut capital of the world. You've tasted directly and indirectly Coffee County, Alabama in your life, because peanuts and peanut oil, peanut butter comes from there. And in 1919, the town did something extraordinary. They created a monument, this one. And it was a very epic monument that you would only build in a season of just financial surplus. It's this very large statue in the center of the town, and up at the very tip top of the statue is a boll weevil. And the monument says this: December 11th, 1919, in profound appreciation of the boll weevil and what it has done as the herald of prosperity, this monument was erected by the citizens of Enterprise, Coffee County, Alabama. What had been the devastation for so many in that region became the source of celebration for them. That they literally built a monument, and there is a Greek goddess holding a boll weevil that you can still see today. That's a declaration. It was a monument. It was a monument to what hope could do in the midst of a complete siege from these bugs. It unlocked the prosperity of an entire county of people because they didn't give up hope. And I would argue, as followers of Jesus, there is an even better monument of hope than a boll weevil. and it's the empty grave of Jesus Christ. That monument declares to all the world, echoing 2,000 years later after it was vacated, that hope is still alive and his name is Jesus. That if you're not dead, God's not done. That there is no area of our life that is beyond the resurrection power of his capacity. That there is no marriage, there is no addiction, there is no life, there is no finances, there is no soul beyond the escape, beyond the reach of what he can do and the life that he can bring. It is a monument of hope that will allow us, that allowed me in that dark moment sitting on that boat to say, no, I don't believe God's done. I'm going to keep moving forward. Even though I had people who used to come to this church get back to me and say, this church will not make it. You want to talk about emotionally devastating. Have some of people that you called your best friends whispering behind your back that the church won't make it. I walked with knives in my back. And I was like, you know what? You don't write my story. He does. I'm going to keep moving forward, God, because I don't think you're done. And I'm telling you, some of the strongest, most powerful faith moments in my entire life happened in the last 18 months of my life. You don't even know how strong I got. Because I would walk up here with the weight of their words hanging in my ear and being, no, God, you're not done. And this church is going to do more this year than it's ever done before. And now that we're in 2023, do you know we are helping 9 churches like ours get started this year because so many churches closed in the pandemic that I was like, no. We made it because God showed up in people's generosity, and we're not done, and we're not done helping others be not done. And so this year, we're already committed to helping 9 other churches get started who are going to have the impact that we've had in our community. They're going to have it in their community too. That's what you do when hope starts. Yes, that's what you do when hope starts to fill you. Is you start to look around and you start to see where dead places are, and you walk up to graves and you're like, graveyard. You just walk through graveyards and you're like, I wonder what could happen here. Because maybe it's not done. And so I don't know what the graveyards in your life is. I don't know where you've waved a white flag. But I know that a happy new year can happen for you. And the first thing that you and I have to decide to do is to hope again. Is to quit waving the white flag and put it on the ground and start looking towards the empty tomb, believing that God's not done, you're not dead, and that this can be possible for you in every area of your life. Whether it's romantic, whether it's financial, whether it's professional, or whether it's in your own soul and you growing in a faith following Jesus Christ. And I look forward to seeing you back here next week as we continue the conversation around Happy New Year. Let's pray. God, thank you. Thank you for the reality that you're not done. That we're in this room, we're listening online because you're not finished. It doesn't matter what we think about the circumstances. It doesn't matter how dark the circumstances have gotten, because the empty tomb is a monument to what you can do and the hope that you can bring and the victory that can come, even in the midst of grief and despair. God, thank you for what's at stake that you see that we don't. That when we think of surrendering, we don't see the successes that could have happened in the aftermath. But you do. And so, God, help us to realize that us putting down the flag, us refusing the quiet quit in those areas, that there is so much at stake. There are so many stories that could be shared that come out of the transformation. And so help us to dream fully in this new year. Thank you, Jesus, for your love for us, for your grace towards us. Thank you that for any of us who don't know you, the extension, the invitation to follow you is right in front of us. And for those who have been following Christ, that redemption and hope is handed out to us in the moments that we just turn to you. And so help us, even in the closing song today, just to begin to dream, to begin to awaken in our hearts what you could do in the areas of our lives where we've already had funerals, where we've already surrendered. And thank you that you're a God who never quiet quitted on us, but that you are a God who walked out of the grave, walking out carrying our hope, our life, our joy, our peace, and our victory in this life and the life ever after. And it's in your name, Jesus, I pray. Amen. So I want to thank you for being here today. I want to invite you to stand because we just want to kind of declare over you. We want to be, this team wants to be a whole lot better looking version of that statue with the boll weevil. Right? We just want to be a monument with words and with a song that's a reminder that God is not done, that he's not finished, that there is a victory and there is a hope that is worth celebrating. There is a victory and a hope worth walking and moving towards, that you're not dead, he's not done, greater things are still here to come. So I want to invite you to stand, sing, and declare that with us.
Run for cover, but the miracle that I just can't get over, my name is registered in heaven. I believe in signs and wonders. I have resurrection power. Still the miracle that I just can't get over, my name is registered in heaven. Yeah, my praise belongs to you forever. This is my testimony from death to life, 'cause grace rewrote my story. I'll testify, by Jesus Christ the righteous, I'm justified. This is my testimony. This is my testimony. Together, sons and daughters, bought with blood and washed in water. Sing the praises of the Spirit, Son, and Father. Our God will finish what he started. Yes, our God will finish what he started. Oh, this is my testimony from death to life. 'Cause grace rewrote my story, I'll testify. By Jesus Christ the righteous, I'm justified. This is my testimony. This is my testimony. You're not done. Greater things are still to come. Oh, I believe. If I'm not dead, you're not done. Greater things are still to come. Oh, I believe. If I'm not dead, you're not done. Greater things are still to come. Oh, I believe. If I'm not dead, you're not done. Greater things are still to come. Oh, I believe. This is my testimony from death to life. 'Cause grace rewrote my story. I'll testify. By Jesus Christ the righteous, I'm justified. This is my testimony. Oh, I'm alive. This is my testimony from death to life. Come, grace rewrote my story. I'll testify. By Jesus Christ the righteous, I'm justified. This is my testimony. This is my testimony.
I don't know about you, but just that refrain of like, if I'm not dead, God's not done. I hope that kind of got into your head like one of those little earworms, like any of the songs from Encanto or Frozen or any of those other things I end up watching with my kids, that like I wake up in the middle of the night and it's like 2 a.m. and I have to use the bathroom and I'm like, why am I singing Don't Talk About Bruno right now? I feel like I should talk to a doctor about that because I'm really disturbed what's happening inside of my head right now. I hope that phrase kind of sticks in the same way, that you walk into this week, you walk into the areas of your life being like, you know what? I'm not dead. He's not done. And there are greater things to still come. And that's just for you to know, like, I mean, this series sets the tone for the next 6 months, and what we've laid out for series and things that we're going to have at Encounter Church in the next 6 months is all geared towards this idea of Happy New Year, whether it's in some of the resources that we've been working on that we're going to roll out, some of the returning of old things that used to be a part of the church pre-pandemic, like Soul Food, which was a place to connect with each other, or worship communion nights, which I'm so excited about. Like, all of those things are coming in the next few months, and we want you to know about it. We want you to be connected with it. We want you to know when groups are restarting. And so that's why the email that we send out every week is so important. And if you don't have our email, you don't have our app, both of those are free. We will not scam or spam you. You can sign up for either encounterchurch.com/app, encounterchurch.com/email, because we want you to have the resources. And in fact, this week, we're going to be sending out a resource towards the end of this coming week that's just an assessment to help you kind of look at your life in entirety and say, hey, broad sweep, where are the areas in my life where I could put some energy and start to see me moving from surviving to thriving? And so to get that resource, to get that link, you need to be a part of the email. So we want you to just to be aware of that. Our app is going to be populated throughout this year. We're working on some new things that we're really excited about. And so if you've never downloaded that, I would encourage you to do that. You can give to Encounter Church through the app. You can read the Bible through the app. There's just spiritual resources, parenting seminars that we upload. We have a new parenting content that'll come out next month that we're super excited about, raising boys and girls, that just kind of help you understand the different stages of their life. What do they need? Because frequently with my 3-year-old, I'm like, I don't have a box for you. And what do I do with you? Because you are not your sister. You are crazy. And so it's a resource that's helpful for me that I think it's going to be helpful for you as well. So thank you so much for being here today. We look forward to seeing you back here next week as we continue our series, Happy New Year. And Happy New Year. God bless. Bye.